Going on, ladies and gentlemen? I just want to hop on here and do a little quick rundown review of the ancient period before our test on Tuesday, October 28th. And so, what I'd like to do is kind of tell it like a story, the rise, the consolidation, and then some changes that we started to see towards the end of the ancient period. So, as far as time span, we're going back 5,000 years, but even so, agriculture has already existed for thousands of years at this point, so it is not to be viewed as some sort of new development. Rather, what we're seeing is the complexity of agriculture, its expansion, and the effects that that is then having on civilization and the growth of civilization. And so this is about a 2,500 year period, a lot of years within that. Of course, we kind of shrink it down and highlight some of the key points, and we go to some of the key areas like Mesopotamia, where we see the Sumerians, the Babylonians. We didn't get the chance to look at the Assyrians in class. They fit into that same Mesopotamian culture. It's just that they're a little bit later in history. But anything, if they come up, say like on the test, the same principles and ideas apply. It's not as though they have some wildly unique or new things that we haven't learned about. And so they can fit into that same category. The Egyptians, the Indus River Valley, and the Shang in China in the Huanghe River Valley. So with that, we start with the development of large-scale agriculture. Population is increasing, villages are growing, agriculture is becoming more widespread, and that raises the question, how do we deal with the problems that agriculture is presenting? The floods, the lack of water, the droughts. How do we make our labor more efficient? And so one of the themes we see is the development of new technology, innovation, whether it be the plow here showed on this Egyptian tomb painting, or whether it be the irrigation canals here showed in this little illustration. We see humans modifying the environment to ensure that they can acquire more food, to make it more efficient. Now, the only thing is, this can't be possible unless somebody is orchestrating it, unless something is orchestrating it. And that is where we're going to see states form. Same thing here with the step wells in the Indus River Valley, or the ziggurats in Mesopotamia with the crop storage, the step wells for the water reservoir to store the water. This can't be done without a state forming in response. And so in order to orchestrate the labor, in order to fund these projects, since these are such large-scale endeavors, we see a hierarchical, specialized labor role hierarchy system within these ancient civilizations, where we find a king and priestly class at the top. Priestly because they have a religious connection, as does the king, in their ability to communicate and receive messages from the gods, or at least they claim. And so, with that, we do see inequality emerge that we had not seen previously before the rise of large-scale states. And of course, we create these engravings, create these monuments to showcase and demonstrate our authority and our power. People will obviously seek to question, why is it that I am born, say, as a peasant or a artisan? Why can't I be the ruler of my state? Well, you clearly weren't given the divine order. Divine meaning from the gods. And we see that all throughout the ancient period. This is a theme. This will most certainly come up. The reason why they make this claim is to give themselves legitimacy, give their rule legitimacy, and ensure that people do not question their rule. And so we'll see that with the Pharaoh in Egypt. He's literally going to claim that he is a god. He can connect with the other gods. Shang rulers will claim that they can receive messages from the ancestors, and the ancestors were essentially viewed as godlike figures, and there was this extreme ancestor veneration, respect for what they had to offer to the people on earth in Shang China. And Mesopotamian kings, we see that as well. They claim to be intermediaries. Messages can be received from the gods, and this is all about, as I said, legitimizing their rule. Now that they have formed, they've legitimized the rule, they have hierarchical systems that ensure specialized labor and projects can be created. they need to expand because you only have so many resources within your one area. And so what we see is either conquest expansion or the development of trade relationships. Now, with conquest expansion, they need militaries. Militaries will ensure that they can actually go and conquer, and also ensure that they can defend themselves from conquest. But then once they do conquer, we see the tribute system at play, where those that have been conquered are going to be asked to offer goods, whether it be harvested grains, whether it be gold, ivory, whatever, to the king and to the state that has done the conquering, to show their loyalty, to show their respect. And in exchange, they usually would be left alone for the most part, but they obviously now are no longer a sovereign group of people, which means they can't rule for themselves. They have to exist under the conquered state. And trade is another way to ensure you can expand to acquire more resources. And so trade is going to develop. We see trade between the Mesopotamians and Egyptians. We see it between the Indus Valley civilization and the Mesopotamians. We find those seals in both places. This engraving actually here is from Hatshepsut's conquest of this state Punt, where they established a trade relationship. They were using these massive ships on the Nile River, which is again showing the role of technology. And we see them bringing back trade goods up here. And so with the state's expansion, with them growing and developing, it's very important that they're simultaneously consolidating their power, making it stronger, making it more tied together. And the way we see this take place is through writing, record keeping. How can you organize a state without writing things down? You forget so easily. So we have scribes become a class of people that will write down the orders of the king, write down the plans for agriculture, write down the plans for trade. And then they will often then inscribe those into legal codes and publish those codes legally, like Hammurabi's code, so that people understand the punishments for their crime, that people understand the values of their society and what they are to do, what they are not to do. This keeps it organized. This keeps control. It consolidates their power. Now, within this framework, religion is developing and expanding. And in this ancient period, it is very often polytheistic, very centered around nature gods. As you look at these Egyptian gods here, we see so many of them related to nature, the life of the Egyptians, god of earth, god of the sun, god of the dead. And with that, there was typically rituals, sacrifice. The priestly class was to communicate and to send the messages of the gods back to the people. The pharaoh in Egypt was viewed as an intermediary as well as a god himself. It was very centered on nature, on the world that we see from the outside, from us looking to the outside. We see all these phenomena taking place. What can explain that? How can we ensure that good things happen to us? Rainfall. How can we ensure that droughts don't happen to us? We pray to these gods until we start to see some shifts over time. The developments, specifically in Judaism, we're seeing it, a switch to monotheism. Over time, one god amongst many gods was viewed as more powerful, and then eventually viewed as the only god. And now there's a shift. It's becoming a little bit more universal, where you can worship from wherever. You don't have to be praying to the Nile. You can worship this God, in this case of Judaism, Yahweh, pictured here, wherever. And we see the covenant emerge with this chosen group of people. And instead of a law code that is built around all the worldly affairs, agriculture, marriage, instead of it being just focused on the specifics in that realm, we start to see it shift more towards like human concerns. So think of it going from the world to the self. Things like ethical behavior. How should I carry myself throughout the day? Why should I want to be a good person? Why should I care about morality? It's not that that wasn't included in those other laws. It just wasn't the main focus. You get punished for doing something that you can consider immoral, like not closing your dam, but the focus wasn't that the dam being left open was immoral. Now we're seeing that focus shift more on human concerns, ethical behavior. And so right here, we have some of the major highlights. I hope this helped in reviewing. Obviously, the review sheet as well is going to be very helpful. Vocab practicing. I can't include that all in this slideshow. But yeah, hope it helped. Hope you have a good rest of your weekend. And that's all I got for you. Have a great rest of your day.